Even though technology empowers us to sustain life in extraordinary situations, it's not always easy to deal with the consequence of that. And that a family member can linger for a very long time. And you'll see how your Indian family we are bicultural. And we have our traditions on one side that we wish to maintain and be true to because it's who we are and our identity. But we're also contemporary Americans just like you. And a DNR situation with a loved one can be very emotionally difficult. So there's no easy way around that. And that it automatically puts us into this very emotionally complex situation. And according to Dr. Walt Hollow, who's a native physician, he has some published works out there that may be helpful to you. If you do a Google search for him, you'll see his publications. He looks at making the patient and their family feel as comfortable as possible with whatever they're faced with. So I think we've kind of hit this many times, that talking about death may cause it to happen, and that many cultures and the native language, the way that it's put together, they disfavor that negative thinking, to focus on the positive and to focus on the balance. So you can sometimes see the catch-22, and we feel it too as native people. But through connections to our family, and the humor and the relationships that we build with each other and build with you as providers, we all somehow survive that ordeal, no matter how serious the medical things are that are going on with members of our family. So you might want to take a look at what cultural resources that you have available to you within your facility or within the community where you are serving your patients. Does your facility accommodate native practices? This is relatively new that medical facilities have had to have a policy regarding smudging. And smudging is the burning of one of the sacred herbs. And I was raised Catholic, that's why I make fun of them all the time. But you know, the blessing with the holy water and how that protects your spirit and it makes you present to the Lord. That's what smudging does for Native people. The smoke that we bathe our outer spirit in is cleansing us so that when we pray, we're in the best shape that we can make ourselves to dress up, so to speak, before you speak to your Creator. And that it precedes prayer and that it's individual. You don't need a holy person to do it for you, though sometimes they do. So that's important to us. And when we're in a different facility, then there's issues they worry about. The sprinkler systems might come on. Somebody might have asthma. We work in a tobacco-free building and complex. You can't even smoke outside anymore. So those are things that your facility has to take into consideration when working with the Native family. If that's what they need to do to pray, to have comfort and hope and that well-being, how can we facilitate that? Some places have told me they put towels, close the door and put towels at the bottom of the door so the smoke won't get out. Open up a window a little bit, or they'll have designated places within their large hospital complex where a family can go. I think Great Falls Benefice Hospital probably has the best example of that, to have a cultural place where Natives can do their healing work with a patient, but still in the facility where they need a lot of your services. Having Native elders, healers present in your hospital. I think this is particularly important when you have people who are in car accidents or unintentional injuries and those emergency situations, if that were available. Do you know who they are in your community? Do you know how to create that list of those folks in your community who could come and give counsel to a family that's unexpectedly thrown into a medical crisis? Do you have native language speakers so that you don't have to call me from my job to deal with my grandma? Actually, she didn't speak her native language. She was fluent in French. So I'm not fluent in French, but I know when I'm getting cussed out in French. Also, songs, and the fact that when we pray, even those of us that are non-smokers, when we pray, we puff on a cigarette, because that smoke that goes up when you're praying sends the prayer to the universe, where the Creator and the whole universe receives that prayer. And we do that in the Catholic Masses too, with the incense. And God, when I was a kid, I almost passed out from the stink, but that is a holy thing, and it carries the prayers of the Mass up to the Creator, and it's the same concept. So even though you may work in a non-smoking facility, you may see some of the native people wanting to be outside and have a place where they are smoking, but it's kind of a fine line. Is it recreational or is it spiritual? So when you need help from your community, where can you go to get that kind of help? Tribal colleges are a good resource. Almost every tribal government in Montana has a cultural committee where you can get access to elders and know who has the proper authorities to do healings and who they might recommend. Sometimes our native military associations might be a good contact, that they'll lead you to the right person. And some of our tribes are clan-based. The Crow tribe is clan-based. The Blackfeet might prefer their bundle keepers. My older children are Blackfeet, and they are associated with the Beaver Bundle. So their religion and their belief ways are very much guided by the Beaver Bundle. In the Cheyenne culture, it might be more about their traditional military societies or their two leading faith ways, the sacred arrows and the sacred hat. So there will be religious people associated with all of those. So being prepared for smudging, and the sacred herbs are cedar, sweetgrass, sage, and I left off tobacco because you can, if you're a tobacco-free facility, that if you had the flat cedar, it's a cedar that grows in the highest elevations of our state. Sweetgrass is available at all the trading posts, and sage also is readily available. And it's not the bush sage that those of you from Miles City probably drove by thousands of acres of it, but it's the sage that grows in a single strand. It's a single stalk, and they grow individually in large areas of them. That's the type of sage that we do. As a provider, it might be important for you to inquire of your native patient if they're using any herbal remedies. I know that you have a good protocol of asking about prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, but you might want to increase your interview skills to include, are you using any herbal remedies? Because particularly with cancer patients, that there might be some contraindications. It's a fancy word that only you guys know. So that might be important for you in your interview process. Another thing that you may encounter for people that are staying in your facility, artifacts, cultural things that are attached to the person or attached to their bed or in their room. And these are items that are helping them achieve that balance of wellness. And I listed a few here: feathers, medicine pouches, beaded necklaces and bracelets. There could be other items there that are important to that individual, their family, and whatever traditional religious pathway that they are wanting in their lives at that point in time. So it's your turn to change the sheets, and the grandma you're taking care of has all of that stuff there. What do you do? The best thing to do, if you're a female CNA, is if you're on your monthly moon cycle, to trade that chore with somebody else, particularly if your patient is a male. because in our cultures, all the Great Plains tribes, that's almost everybody, including the Salish Kootenai on the west side of the continental, or the west side of the Continental Divide, is that women have the ultimate power. That's why we're the boss of everything. We can bring life. Our bodies, our biology allows us to give life. And that power is, we were born with it. Men have to do a lot of things. They have to fast, they have to do all of this work to gain power. So we keep our powers separate because we understand that our men really had to suffer for it. We just have it because we're cool. So in keeping these powers organized and to not conflict with each other, a woman who's on her moon cycle should not be handling these items that have power, healing power attached to them. And then before you move them, you should ask your patient or ask any one of those 50 people that are there in the room, how should I interact with this? And someone might say, oh, let me do it for you, and they'll move them. And then you can change the sheets or bathe the patient, and then they'll put it all back. So then that will keep you from knocking heads with the family, and then you have to see how mean that Indian woman can really be. I found that when my grandmother was starting to be moved from one facility to the next, or one wing of a hospital to another wing, depending on how her situation would go up and it'd go down, that I wrapped her in a star quilt, and that quilt stayed with her every time she moved. And that helped her feel some sense of security. So I always pass that on as a little tidbit to other families and to providers, that you might suggest that, so that when you move an elder from one facility where they're feeling comfortable and you move them to a new one, they kind of take a nosedive for a little while, that maybe an item that stayed with them. The other thing we did was many of the rooms at where were we? We've been to so many hospitals. St. Vincent's, I think, they had a whiteboard and they'd write on there who the nurse was and who the CNA was. Well, all of us got up there and we wrote down who we were. I'm the boss granddaughter and here's my phone number, you know, and that helped the staff out so much, so that they knew who to call as things changed, and it also told who was in charge, who was representing the family. So culturally competent interventions, be tribally specific, enhance your interview strategies to best determine how you can meet the holistic needs of your patient, not just their medical condition, develop partnerships. And I always advocate, if you're going to do all this stuff with the Native patient, you should get credit for it on your performance evaluations. Some of you are excellent at it. Some of you want to be excellent at it. So when it's time to get merit or pay raises or promotions, your ability to work effectively with the Native patient or the diverse patient should be taken into consideration. Always be a learner. If you ask questions like you're interested in knowing, every single patient is also your teacher. Every single family that comes into your facility to help you take care of their relative is also your teacher. Collect American Indian survivor stories. What worked in your facility? What worked in whatever aspect of healthcare you're providing? Save those stories. Also save the ones that were not helpful, because those are examples that you can present to your Indian family for them to consider. And develop specifically trained staff to work as mediators in your facility. If you have someone who's exceptionally good at it, then consider how you might organize your staffing in your hospital to allow that person to shine and represent your facility well. This is a personal endeavor, and it grows with you as every time you encounter a Native patient, you're going to learn more. It has to be your personal attempt to acquire this knowledge and develop your skills.